Well, the wait is over. This is Nintendo DS.
The Nintendo DS, a revolutionary handheld gaming system that sold over 154 million copies in its 12-year run. The odds are you owned or still own one. You probably played games like Mario, Pokemon,
Ready to catch, battle, and train.
Nintendogs, and if you're me, Transformers War for Cybertron. But less popular on the DS were horror games. There were literally 6 of them. One developer saw this hole in the market and decided to act on it. In the slew of bubbly Nintendo games, on July 3rd, 2008, Square Enix, yes, the ones who make Final Fantasy, quietly released Nanashi no Gemu, or the Nameless Game. Before we can even begin the game, we are given the choice to select our name and gender. Now, this selection does actually affect the narrative of the game slightly, but it doesn't impact the overarching story. In this world, a new popular handheld gaming system, the TS, a dead ringer for the DS, is quickly becoming a household name. Something important here is the wireless internet capabilities of the TS. The prologue introduces us to a group of girls talking about a cursed game.
Have you heard about that game? The one where if you play it, you die a week later?
You have right. That's just another urban legend. You hear them a lot these days. You know, like the one where a woman abandons her unwanted baby in a locker at the station, and he grows up and gets revenge on her. I wish there really was a game that could kill people after a week. I'd give it to my useless boyfriend.
You're just too much.
We begin the game in a college classroom, where the professor is speaking of online information distribution and handheld gaming devices. In the middle of his lecture, we get a notification on our TS. Okay. To save all of our sanity, I will just call it a DS from here on. We get a message saying, a download from Odaka is complete. The UI is nearly identical to that of the original DS. The game that we downloaded is corrupted, and the title and picture are unreadable. The game is a classic RPG. Walking around and speaking to the characters, they talk of a festival. And how the water has magical healing properties. One of the villagers speaks of how they offer an effigy every year to keep the water flowing. At the top of the town, we find a path blocked by 2 guards. They say that entry is forbidden until the ceremony, which will take place that night under the full moon. And we meet the first character, Riko. She tells us that Odaka sent her the same game that we're playing 6 days ago. She then says, so I heard, apparently, that game, it's cursed. And if you play it, you die a week later. She tells us that Odaka has been locked up in his room all week, playing the game. She tells us that she got into a fight with him after asking him if he loved the game more than her. She asked that we go check on him, saying he can't afford to miss any more classes. Leaving the classroom, the game gives us a very basic tutorial on its extremely janky controls. Now, I played this on my DS with a stylus, and with a mouse and keyboard on an emulator, and at first, both were maddening, but by the end of the game, I became a bit of an expert at it. Oh, and if you're wondering why I have the screen like this, well, yeah. And don't worry, I can already hear the comments.
Well, actually, I would prefer if the screens were displayed that way.
And to that, I say no. Leaving the courtyard and entering Odaka's flat, we can really appreciate the detail on a game that ran on 4 megabytes of RAM. Like, my outro music is 4.5 megabytes. We enter Odaka's flat and immediately see that all of the windows are boarded up. Trying to open the bathroom gives us this gem of an animation. The sink is full of hair, and the tub is full of green goop. We hear the same song from the game, coming from the hallway. One thing to take note on is how amazing the sound design in this game is. The 3D spatial sound really works, and you can hear precisely where each noise is coming from. Walking down the hall, we find 2 rooms. The first being a closet with a fun jump scare. And the second being a media room with a note taped to the wall. The note reads, "Day 6. If the rumor about having just 1 week is true, then I only have... But something happened in the game. I finally managed to get an item for my character. Is this one of the win conditions? Might I be saved after all?" Entering the room at the end of the hall, and reaching the source of the music, we get an update to the game on our DS. And, apparently, our character thinks now is a great time to start gaming. Quick break. If you're enjoying the video so far, consider subscribing. I'm trying to get to 100,000 before the end of the year, and maybe then my dad won't be so disappointed in me. It is now nighttime in the town, and all of the NPCs are missing. At the top of the path, we find them lined up, facing a pond. One of the villagers says, "This year the effigy even has a name." Another says, "It's very well made. It almost looks human." And the effigy is called Oda. The villagers in blue robes tell us how we need a torch to participate, and that we can get one from the item shop. The shopkeep says, "We're all out of torches. That's odd. I'm sure I left my own torch here. Where has it gone to?" At the center of the town, next to a well, we see a ghost. It says, "Take this." the game closes, and we realize that we now have a flashlight in our hands. On the wall of this room, we see a childlike drawing of a girl, and a note that reads, "Last day today. I can see light shining through the cardboard. I'm frightened about tomorrow. I can't stop thinking about the game, even when I should be sleeping. But there's no time left now. I have to leave some things behind. I can't just let people die because of a game. I can't let them be killed by a game. I won't send the game to anyone else. It ends here. Mother, Father, I don't want to die." Climbing up the ladder, we see another drawing, this time of a lighthouse. And in the corner, we find Odaka's corpse. Outside, Riko is waiting for us, and we tell her what we found. She runs in and is unsurprisingly horrified by what she finds. The next day, we are on a subway, and we can see that we are playing as Riko. We get an update for the game on our DS. In the field, we see 7 statues, with 2 empty plots. The music is also very distorted. We can speak with each of the statues. The last statue we talk to is Odaka. He says, "Riko, so you've ended up here too. I'm so happy. Now we can be together forever. No one can come between us anymore. Not even Beam. I knew all along, Riko. I'm not blind. That you loved Beam more than you loved me. I've always known. Always. But none of that matters anymore. We're together now, and forever." Riko then confirms that she did love our character more than she loved Odaka. Riko now notices that the train is empty. We begin to hear Odaka calling our name.
Riko.
Trying to follow it, we reach the end of the train, when suddenly the power goes out. Walking back, train car after train car, the advertisements on the train just turn into strips of red paper. The DS has another notification. Another game download. Now, to be honest, I spent way too much time walking down these paths before I noticed these little flowers. Following the flowers, we exit the level. Looking at the floor on the train, we can see another flower. Going through this door finally brings us to car number 5. And in this one, another flower. As we approach it, back at the university, we meet Professor Uyama. This guy is literally just your average Redditor, but he explains his interest in the case, and how he may be able to help us. Of course, they always need to question the first person at the scene, no matter how suspicious the condition of the body. They're just too modern. If we could turn the clock back 150 years or so, qualifies me to reject the advances of modern society process that has been brought into the darkness, in which legend and mystery, the definition of what flourishing of urban legend is vague. This doesn't change the fact that features more widely and from person to person. Still, the modernization of folklore on trends dominate. Could you give me a summary of events that you've experienced so far? Although his dialogue is rather insufferable, he is a key character in the game who will guide us along. He mentions that on the DSs that he collected from the victims of the supposed cursed game, he was able to track down several IP addresses. He asks us to identify which IP address is common between all 3 of the DSs that have the game, in order to identify the source of the file. This UI absolutely melted my brain, but after figuring out what the hell I was supposed to do, we identify Mercy General Hospital as the common domain. He tells us that the hospital has been abandoned for years, and that unspeakable illegal practices were going on there. Because he is too busy investigating the DS, he asks us to go alone, and that he will email us with any updates while we are there. The hospital is pretty much what you'd expect. Trying to open the game before we get an update just shows this. A park bench next to a body of water. Going down the hall, we find an operating table covered in blood. And then this happens. We escape the ghost and traverse through a maze-like series of doors. until we stumble across a nursery. Going down the hall, we find another ghost in a red dress. If we let her get to us, this happens. We take up the final lot in the field of statues. If we actually run from the ghost girl, we re-enter the nursery. And, for some reason, smash our DS? Thankfully, somehow, a new one appears. We can see that it has a new installation of the game. This time, we are in a new place. Frisia. The town full of beautiful flowers. The residents speak of how the flowers have magical properties here, just like the water from the last town. There is an inn, a shop, and at the very end of the town, a chapel with a wedding in progress. We meet the groom. His name is Ikuta, and apparently, the bride's parents don't agree to this marriage. Beyond the church is a headstone, where we find a flower ring. As we collect it, this happens. The groom is dead, and one of the NPCs advises us to stay at the inn, which we do. In our sleep, the bride wakes us, and thinks that we are the groom. Now, this part was very frustrating, as every time I got within one tile of the bride, I would have to restart. But after finally getting through, she says, "I see. You don't like me anymore. Do you? I won't let you leave me. Ever." I won't let you leave me. I can't. Our character notes how we can use the interference on the TS to see if there's a ghost nearby. And, well, it looks like we're all clear. As we walk into the next room, we get an email from Professor Uyama. He says to look for evidence of a death similar to Odaka's, and that 4 years ago, a similar body was taken to the hospital. We find a room full of tissue samples, and one of them is making a strange noise. Subscribe. Before exiting this room, we get yet another email from Uyama. He says he found the name of the aforementioned victim, Shin Yutani. He says we should find his chart, and not to worry about finding the source of the game. After continuing deeper into the hospital, and having a few more encounters with the ghosts, we finally find the document storage room. We search around a bit. Some of the notes read, Mercy General Hospital Directory's logbook. A lot of the hospital staff have been playing games since that patient arrived. Probably a coincidence. Director's logbook. A body arrived today with a handheld gaming system held tightly to its chest. Logbook. So many staff have gone missing. Something must be happening at this hospital. Something unimaginable. But on this shelf, we find Yutani's chart. The music is even more distorted than before. We find Riko's statue and she says, "So you've come to see me. Do you recognize me? It's Riko. You knew, didn't you, that I was in love with you. I love you, Beam. I love you more than I ever loved Odaka. But I died because of you. Because of you, Beam. Oh. You've come. You've come to see me. Isn't that right, Beam?" When the game closes, we see Riko's ghost standing right in front of us. And after the slowest getaway ever, we return to Professor Uyama. Now, he says in the most Redditor way possible, how the TS is directly linked to the deaths we have witnessed, which, at this point, is already pretty obvious. He then says how the chart we found is like a beacon, like a lighthouse. He says Yutani worked at a game company called Ubisoft. As he is speaking, the game gets another update. This time, there are several children in a field, with a few statues. They say how they get to live here forever, and how they never grow old. A sort of Neverland. Now, the first thing that came to my mind was that these children played this game, but because they are children, they don't die. They just end up here. A sort of purgatory. One of the children says, "See these statues? They are the people who made this game." Interestingly, the children are aware that they are in a game, but they pay no mind to it. After that, Uyama instructs us to go to the Nakano shopping center, where we will find the Ubisoft office. Before we leave, Uyama says how he's interested to see what would happen if someone were to receive the game, but not play it. This will be important later. Once we're inside, Uyama emails us, telling us that the office is on the 4th floor, and that he will call the office ahead to let them know we're coming. On the way up to the office, we meet our ghost friends again. This time we need to use some sneaky tactics to avoid them. Once we get to the 2nd floor, we get another email. He says Utani, the guy whose chart we collected, was the president of Ubisoft, and that he called and made an appointment for us. And a little girl answered the phone. We hide on a balcony to avoid the ghost, and slowly move forward. On the 3rd floor, we see an arcade. And it's the cursed game. We narrowly escaped the male ghost by dodging him in a game store. This is honestly so stressful while trying to use the clunkiest controls imaginable. Walking out of the game store, we get another email. He says he wasn't able to find the name of the game, and that they never mentioned it to the media. Hence, the Nameless Game. We finally make it to the 4th floor, where we find Ine Lamau, and get jump scared by a door. That is when this email hits our inbox. Urgent. Apparently, Ubisoft went bankrupt 4 years ago. Uyama suggests that maybe people are still inside doing paperwork, but yeah, that just can't be the case. Going into the office, we get an update. We are in the same field from before with the kids, but this time they're gone. We speak to the statues of the developers. One speaks of the music they created for the game. Another speaks of the bugs and programming. And this one says, "It's not my fault. It's all Ikuda's fault." Ikuda? The name of the groom from the last game? The last one says, "I never thought I'd end up in here, inside the very world I drew." Following the prompt, we check the ending. Here we can see that the producer was Yutani and the director Ikuda. The letters in the credits turn red and spell out, "You die." Immediately after this, Uyama tells us how the president, Yutani, had irreconcilable differences with Ikuda, and that the company went bankrupt. While in this room, the ghost begins to play Ring Around the Rosie with us, and we have to find several documents. The documents in this office give us some context surrounding the game. There is 2 resignation letters, one in protest of Ikuda's dismissal, and another in protest of the cancellation of Project Sun. One document says the theme of Project Sun was family love, but the president, Yutani, says different. The third being a memo notifying of Ikuda's removal. And 6 items for the game. A water doll, forest earrings, a flower ring, which we already found, a crystal pendant, a summer dress, and a blank of love. And 2 more documents referring to Project Sun as the unofficial title of the cursed game. Finally, we find an employee register. Just what we need for Yama. As we leave the office, we rush to the elevator. And, oh, the buttons don't work. I legitimately died 3 times here because I didn't realize that the bottom button was the one I needed to press. Like, in this door opening simulator, where you can basically press anywhere on the screen to interact with 90% of the items, why does this one need to be 5 pixels? Anyway, we enter the parking garage. Scoot past this ghost. And exit. Meeting back up with Uyama, he tells us how all of the employees went missing while working on the game, and how Ikuda, the director, has his address on the employee register. He tells us to go check it out, and that he's too busy investigating Odaka's DS to come with us. Likely story. Arriving at Ikuda's house, we can see that it is completely boarded up, and evidently abandoned. We get an email from Uyama telling us how Ikuda's house foreclosed after he was fired from Ubisoft. And he notes how he was a character in the game. Circling around the house and hopping through a window to get in, we enter a room with blood dripping from the ceiling. In here, we get an update. There is a family. The father discusses how he has to work late, which the daughter protests. He promises that he will take time off soon, so they can go to the hotel by the sea. At this point, we play as the girl, and see a montage of night after night of the father not coming home to see his daughter. Over time, we can see that she gets more and more upset by it. At the end, she says, "He promised." We continue and search around the house a bit more. We find the kitchen, bathroom, and front door, and a set of stairs. Heading up the stairs and walking into the next room, there is this drawing on a desk, and a photo of Ikuda and his family. In the closet, we find Ikuda himself, in a comatose state. Another update. We are back playing as the girl, and at this point, we can piece together that this is Ikuda's family in the game. Even the house is the same. The entryway, family room, kitchen, bedroom, and closet. The little girl storms off and leaves the house. As she does, a familiar figure enters the house. Now, we flash back. The screen is red, and judging by our new height, we can assume that we are playing as the girl, Asahi. We walk upstairs and find Yutani. He says, "Come here. I'll do your face and makeup, just like your mommy. I'll paint your lips a deep, deep red." He chases us out of the house, and we barely make it away. We are back standing in front of the closet. Ikuta murmurs his daughter's name, and we take the journal that he is clutching closely to his chest. Returning to Uyama, he confirms that a murder did in fact take place in Ikuta's house, and that Asahi, Ikuta's daughter, made it out alive. We go through Asahi's journal. The first page shows a drawing of her and her family at the Cape Side Hotel. And in the top left of the photo, a sun. The next few pages are blank. Until we get to this one. Mama is dead. She'd still be alive if Papa had been home. I hate Papa. I hate his job, and I hate the game he's making. Uyama tells us that after the murder of Ikuta's wife, he still continued to work on the game. He suggests that the game became cursed because of Ikuta's dead wife, Tomaka. He tells us how it's possible that Asahi ran away to the Cape Side Hotel, the place that she spoke of so fondly. He says that he will meet us there after he checks something out at Odaka's apartment. We arrive at a tunnel, which serves as the entrance to the Cape Side Hotel. And this marks our final day before the curse of the game catches up to us. We walk through the tunnel, avoid a ghost, and approach a roadblock with an animatronic policeman. Is this, like, a thing in Japan? Anyway, We continue down the path and get a message from Uyama telling us he is on his way. Entering the underground entrance, we cross paths with all of the ghosts we've seen before. And get jump scared. We finally enter the hotel, and notice that it is dilapidated and abandoned. At this point, we need to carefully and precisely navigate through the ghosts. And this is honestly just so tense, especially on the DS. Somehow, this part of the game is just so immersive. The lack of quick and precise control makes you unable to snap and look around quickly. And because you can only move in the direction you are looking, you never really have time to see if the ghost is close. But it always feels like it's right behind you, especially hearing its wet footsteps with the 3D sound. After a few failed attempts, we finally make it to the next floor, where we enter a room and find this. The game starts back up, and we're in an unfamiliar place. With Uyama? He tells us to keep playing the game, and to find Asahi. Somehow he is in the game, communicating with us. He tells us he is experiencing digital curse. Speaking to each of the characters in these rooms, they all tell us something along the lines of, "Get out." With this building being some sort of large lodging area, it's safe to assume that this is a representation of the hotel in the game. There are also these ghosts moving erratically throughout the level, which I admittedly died to several times. Near the double doors, one of the blue-robed characters says, "The only thing that awaits you here is certain death." Entering the large room that appears to be a chapel, we find a girl laying on the ground, repeatedly saying, "Stay away. Don't come back. Go away. Go away. Go away." The game closes, and we are in the room alone. It seems somehow Uyama made the ghost leave. Walking out of this room and into the stairwell, there is a drawing of a bench on the wall, similar in style to the lighthouse drawing we saw in Odaka's room. This is probably the bench we see in the waiting screen of the game. The third door we check opens, and inside, a spooky ghost. But before we nope out of there, we can see the same drawing from the desk at Ikuda's house on the bed. In the next room, we find it again on the back of the door. Going down the hallway, we enter another stairwell and ascend to the 3rd floor. Going through this dining room, we are trapped between both of the ghosts. And honestly, with no other option, I tried giving this one a hug. That didn't work out too well. I guess the solution was to just be patient. The ghosts fade away, and we can now enter the room. It is the chapel from the game. And in the same spot, a girl, or specifically, Asahi. We immediately open the new update on the game. At the bell in the chapel, we get the Tiara of Love, the 6th item referenced in the office, which was previously unknown. We go and speak with Asahi. She says, "You came all this way. Why? Why have you come for me? I tried to kill you, but you still came for me. Not even Papa came for me. I hate games so much. Games are what took my Papa away from me. Games are what killed my Mama. Please, tell me, why hasn't Papa come for me? I've been waiting for him. Such a very long time to wait for Papa." The game closes, and she's gone. On the table, a drawing of a sun, and the torn page from her journal. On the way out, Uyama says he is almost there, and that he will meet us outside. We walk back through the underground tunnel, which is pretty uneventful, until we get this cryptic message from Uyama. At the end of the tunnel, we can see the professor. And... shit. Running back and hiding in the hallway, we hear that unforgettable sound. We go to talk to the characters, but they are all Asahi. She says, "I'll never forgive Papa for choosing the game over me and Mama." Still not giving up? You mean you want more pain? Sorry, but that means I have to kill you too. That's why I'm avenging her. Mama hates him too, you know. There's no way out for you. Not from this game. My game. I killed the people who made this awful game. I hate everyone who plays games. I'll never forgive him. I'll never forgive games. And I'll never forgive you. After the game closes and we begin roaming, we get our final message from Uyama. It's an automated message about the picture of the lighthouse in Odaka's flat. The lighthouse. We follow the conveniently placed signs that read, Seven Capes Lighthouse. At the foot of the lighthouse, we see Asahi. And we begin our trek to the top. Now, this literally took a full 3 minutes of just this, and let me tell you, it felt like an eternity. After finally reaching the top of the lighthouse, we find Asahi on the rail. Once we reach the bottom of the stairs and walk through the door, a 3-minute timer starts. Now, at this point, I was completely confused. At first, I tried speedrunning down to the end of the path, but nothing happened. The second time I clicked on this statue, and when a ghost popped out, I ran. I tried touching the other statue, but no luck. At this point, I knew I already failed the run, so I was just going to let this ghost end it early. And... oh... I see. Without enough time, I had to restart. On this attempt, we began to speak with all of these statues. The first was Uyama, touching him and entering the world, he says, Uyama then begins to have a long conversation with us. To summarize, he tells us that the game used Asahi's hatred for her father as a vessel to spread itself. He also tells us how he conducted an experiment on himself by seeing if just having the game was enough to enact the curse. And, well, turns out it was. He then tells us that we need to go to Asahi and calm her hatred to save ourselves. His last words are, "Hurry, Beam. Dawn is breaking on your final day." The next statue is Riko. Just like Uyama, Riko tells us that we need to convince Asahi that hate isn't the answer. And if you look closely, you can see that the ghost standing and glitching next to us is in fact Asahi. Next, Odaka. Just like the other two, Odaka tells us that we need to convince Asahi how much her parents love her. And it's kind of sappy. Further down are 3 employees of Ubisoft, all of which we've seen before. The first says how Ikuta developed this game for his daughter, and how he poured his heart and soul into it. She also briefly talks about the music that she made for the game. The second says how hard Ikuta worked on this game, and how he followed in his footsteps as a programmer. The third talks about how Ikuta made this game as a symbol of love, and how devastated he is to see it in this state. And the final statue, covered in blood, is Yutani. Yutani's dialogue is just full of excuses, like jealousy and stress and self-deprecation. He says that he just snapped, but he continues to apologize and kind of delve into how he understands Akani's pain and how he's the reason for it. And that goes on for quite some time. Now for me, seeing Yutani in this rather heartfelt moment just doesn't feel right to me. I mean, he murdered Ikuta's wife in cold blood, and then he tried to kill his daughter. Because of jealousy? I see this as completely inexcusable, but what do I know? At the end of a very familiar bench, we find Asahi. One final update from the game. It's the same village with the chapel from earlier, where Ikuta was getting married. At the headstone, we find Asahi. Now, we are back at Ikuta's house, and we find Asahi in the closet. Next, the hotel. A field. The first village. And finally, the bench. As the game closes, we see Ikuta. Ikuta says, "I see now. Tomoka, you guided me here, didn't you? To Asahi's side. Asahi. It's all my fault. Everything. I left you and your mother alone. Her murder, you closing up your heart, it's my fault. I know it's too late to ask for forgiveness, but that's why I made this game. It was for you. I wanted you to understand how I felt about you." Asahi changes from gray to colored, and she seems to have gotten her soul back. We sit next to Ikuta, watching the sunrise. It's the 7th day, and we're still alive. We ask him what happens next in the story, and he tells us, "I suppose I should write the rest of the story to make up for what I did to my family." The credits roll, but the story does not end here. Just a year later, in 2009, the sequel, Nanashi no Gemu Mi, or The Nameless Game I, was released. The start menu allows us to choose our name and our girlfriend's name and friend's name. For the sake of the video, I'll be leaving it as the default names, Ren and Yuto. The game opens in the RPG, what we're used to, but this time, we have a party. We walk through the familiar town of Varuna. Apparently, the devil killed the water god. Interesting. We find this strange NPC who is dressed in modern-looking clothes, in stark contrast to the fantastical clothing of the other NPCs. He says, "Don't touch me. That's faceless. The devils." At the bottom of the town, an NPC tells us how the Demon King wishes to cover the world in darkness, and how they've been waiting for a hero to save them. The game closes, and we are in Odaka's apartment. Judging from the dialogue, we can determine that this is a different character we are playing as. The dialogue reads how Odaka died a year ago, and how his parents left his apartment untouched, possibly due to the fact that they couldn't accept his sudden death. It also recaps how he played a cursed game and died 7 days later. We open his door and flash back to the same university, but 3 days earlier. Here we meet the 3 new characters. Yuto, our friend, Ren, our girlfriend, and Professor Kawagawa, Uyama's replacement. For some reason, the characters in this sequel are just so uncanny. We discuss the cursed game with Yuto, and Kawagawa, the professor, threatens to assign us a 10-page essay because we were sleeping in class. the conversation ends, and we are back in Odaka's apartment. Walking into the bathroom, we hear running water coming from the toilet. But nothing. The game opens, and in a chest we find a faceless left arm. Going upstairs, this strange sequence of events unfolds. We can see that the characters are Ren and Yuto. We go back downstairs and speak to a strange ghost character, who says, "Won't you come with me? It'll be fun." Upstairs, the ghost says, "You're gonna die either way, so hurry up already." Ren comes over to speak to us and tells us that Yuto has been acting strange ever since we got the faceless left arm. She asks us to check on him, and when we do, we can see that clearly Yuto has some sort of jealousy for us. He walks off and the screen fades to red. Now we are back at the university. But this is taking place 5 hours before we went to Odaka's apartment. Yeah, I know. It's confusing. Ren tells us that Yuto hasn't been at school for 3 days, and that we should go check on him. Sound familiar? We show up at his apartment and look around a bit. We hear the game music coming from a room adjacent to us. We find a strange collection of tissues next to his bed. And in his closet, he's dead. And in the same manner as the last game, a message appears saying, "Transmission complete. Yuto to beam." Going back to the university, we explain what happened to Kawagawa and Ren. At which point they tell us to investigate Odaka's apartment. After that, we are finally back to where we were, at Odaka's apartment. Strangely, we get an email from Yuta. He must have scheduled it to send, just like Oyama did. In the email, Yuto tells us that the game has a hidden command, which if we don't use, we won't be able to beat the game. We continue into the house, finding an ominously placed pillow under a bedsheet. And we get jump scared by the same mirror. Before entering the room that Odaka died in, we get another email from Yuta. The hidden command, which appears to be a strange poem. Up in the loft, we find a DS. Opening it, we can see that we are back in the game. In here, we can find Ren unresponsive, and downstairs, another man under a pile of rocks. An NPC tells us that up ahead is the resting place of those sacrificed to the water god. Another NPC tells us, don't focus on the whole message, just the beginning of it. Going further into the dungeon, we find Odaka. He says, I didn't think anyone would come down here. That's fine, considering what I promised to do. Now, tell me the password. Just the beginning of the message. K-I-L-L. Got it. Odaka then asks if we really want to go through with it. Which we accept, obviously. The game suddenly closes, and well, that happened. After another lengthy conversation with Kawagawa and Ren, we go over what has happened to our eye, and how basically we now have the ability to see energy from spirits. Hence the title, Nameless Game Eye. Kawagawa also notes that we should investigate Uyama's house to find any information that he had on the game. Ren suggests that we check the subway station for a memo that Uyama left there. So, we are left with a choice. And his house seems to be the better option. Walking down the street, our left eyeball begins to get fuzzy. This is when we see our first ghost, which chases us back to the main road. We walk up across a phone booth. Somehow the game is able to update from here, and it opens. An NPC tells us that he plants flowers to find his way home, so he doesn't get lost. And another tells us that the spirits dislike the smell of the flowers. Good to know. Walking further down, we find a ghost, and a white marking on the wall that we can only see through our left eye, or the top DS screen. Interacting with the marking opens the game, where we can plant a flower and get the ghost to move, which is reflected in the real world. This goes on for a while, walking, finding a marking, and planting a flower. With a fair amount of jump scares in between. Eventually, we enter a tunnel and find Yuto's ghost. Finally, we make it back to the original street, where we seem to be stuck in an endless Mario 64 staircase loop. Turning around, we find a red marking. Interacting with this opens a platformer. Interesting. After turning back, we make it to Uyama's house, or what's left of it. We find a bunch of markings on the ground with our left eye, and a notebook. A page reads, Investigating Karaoke Club Utaya, Inspecting Routes of Diffusion. It appears that several people died there at roughly the same time. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Maybe I can find out what mechanism the game uses to distribute itself and cause a chain of deaths. A girl in a red dress suddenly appears behind us. The game opens and the girl says, "Why did you come here? What did you obtain? You'll die too, without accomplishing anything." And when it closes, she's gone. Returning to Kawagawa, he tells us that he got an email from Uyama? It read, "Don't get involved with the game. You'll invite an unwanted demise." Kawagawa and Ren theorized that Uyama transferred himself into the game somehow to complete his study. In his notebook, Uyama marked a karaoke club as a place of interest for this mystery. Apparently, many inexplicable deaths occurred at this place around the time Uyama disappeared. Ren suggests that we go to a Hotel Quint, based off the memo that she found at the subway. For now, we pick the karaoke club. Immediately upon entering, we can see that this place is abandoned. Even though an email from Kawagawa says they are open for business. Through our left eye, we see a familiar figure. We walk through the rooms, making forward progress. Entering a common area, one of the doors is moving back and forth, which leads to a locker room. In a locker, we find a note reading, "Some Uyama guy came, a professor from a university. He asked us about radio waves and antennas. I had no idea what he was talking about. He wanted to go up to the roof, so I let him. Then one of the senior employees yelled at me for doing that." And a radio emitting static, which, when interacted with, starts the game. We are in a slightly different town, but with these strange flower things, which remind me a lot of this from VeggieTales, if anyone else knows what I'm talking about. We go and talk to the NPCs, all of which complain about the noise that this thing makes. We find it in the center of the town, kill it, and the game closes. I happen to make the mistake of opening the blood-covered locker with the scratching coming from inside. Continuing through the building, we find more access points for the game. This time, there are 2 flowers, At the top of the map, we notice a well and an ominously placed staircase. After taking out the 2 flowers, we continue to the next level of the building, looking for the roof. After some close encounters with the ghosts, we find another marking. Three flowers to take care of this time. Interestingly, one of the NPCs says how he hired a researcher to take care of the flowers, but he bailed on them. We then unkindly interrupt a ghost in a bathroom stall.
I know, I got my shit, okay. Yeah.
Oh, fuck.
And run up to the next floor. Walking into one of the rooms, a TV speaker says, "It's Blank's revenge. Kinda looks like Asahi's." As we enter the next room, the game starts up. The flower problem seems to have taken care of itself. But if we interact with these strange staticky tiles, we can hear a faint noise. We then follow a strange figure into the basement of this house. Walking into the next room, we immediately find another marking. This time, things have gotten considerably worse. Trying to kill a flower just spawns another. A real hydra. Walking into the basement again, we can see that it is too dark to move. Visiting this NPC gives us access to a torch. And in a chest, a faceless right leg. Going through the now illuminated tunnel, we emerge near the well, where we can see the strange man enter it. Following him, the game closes. We then enter a hallway covered in graffiti. The door won't open, but on the wall, we find red handprints. This again opens the strange platformer. And after beating it, we're able to open the door. This door leads to the roof. And after being chased by a ghost and sprinting down the edge of the building, we make it to the top. Where we find another DS. We emerge from a well and walk up a maze until we reach a house. We find the strange man that we were following in the village. He asks us to take him with us, saying that the game is hunting him down. At this point, a wall of static begins to consume this world. We run back through the maze and into the well. Apparently, Uyama is still alive, in a sense. his mind was uploaded to the game. If you've ever seen the movie Transcendence, this will be a familiar concept. Uyama then tells us that we can talk to him anytime because of the microphone and speakers on the DS. At this point, Uyama suggests that Ren try to contact Ikuta. And he tells us that the student who died at the karaoke club went to Nanto Sunshine Academy. The school apparently shut down to a large number of strange deaths. But everyone here attributes those deaths to the game. Ren takes off in search of Ikuta, and we head to the school. We enter the school and go through a set of double doors. On the left, we see a girl in a white dress, and she's calling to us. For the majority of this level, she leads us to where we need to go next. Walking into the room she was standing in front of, we find a set of keys on the desk. And, picking them up, we meet the girl in the red dress. She says, "Why did you come here? You shouldn't be here. Get out. Get out." As we enter the courtyard and come face to face with another ghost, the game opens. Speaking to each of the NPCs, they complain about how hungry they are. We also notice that the RPG is a one-to-one recreation of the school that we're in. Continuing through the school, we go room to room, following the girl in the white dress. To find pieces of blood-covered candy to give to the other NPCs. This makes that ghost in the hallway disappear so we can continue forward. Eventually, we make our way to the top of a stairwell, with a puddle of blood pooling at the top, which can only be seen through our left eye. Our DS dings. And this cutscene plays. We are introduced to 3 new characters: Akane, Naoki, and Kenta. The scene that plays out is identical to the one that we watched happen with Ren, Yuta, and us. But the names are different. After continuing a little further into the school, we find ourselves in a library, where we walk over to the girl in the white dress. She grabs onto us as we approach her, and the screen turns red. Just like it did in the first game when we were reliving Asahi's memories. So, it's reasonable to believe that we are experiencing yet another memory. We see someone named Akane asking for someone named Kenta. These are the same names from the strange parallel cutscene we saw earlier. An email from an unknown sender reads, "Just disappear." And from this red DS, we can see that we are experiencing the memory of Akane. So, we were asking for Kenta. As we continue to trace our steps, we get more and more emails. "You're disgusting. Die. Give Kenta back." And an email from Kenta himself, saying how Naoki is acting strange. Finally, an email from Naoki. We hear a yell from the second floor, and as we walk up, we see Naoki, covered in blood, standing over Kenta's body. At which point, he pushes us, or Akane, down the stairs. We now find ourselves on the same train from the last game, but this time, we are playing as Ren. Apparently, she was able to get into contact with Ikuta, and she's on her way to meet him. She gets a game update. We see a boy in a burning building, screaming for his big sister. Maybe Ren? Yuto then shows up in the game, mocking Ren for being unable to help. And Ren is shocked that he even knows about this. On the train, things seem very similar to our first event here. It's suddenly empty, and we begin to explore. We see what appears to be Yuta. It's Yuto, you idiot. This is the third time. At the end of the train, and we follow him down the cars. Eventually, Ren's game updates. We walk down a hallway with random NPCs saying very ominous things. At the end, we find Yuto, who says, "Ren, I don't want you around anymore. You're holding Beam back. If only you weren't around. Then Beam and I could have been friends forever. If only you weren't around." The next train car is a little darker. As Ren walks up to Yuto, she says, "Yuto, I'm through playing around." And this spawns behind us. Barely making it away, we enter the next car, and the game opens. We run past a series of traps. Left, right, left. We do the same thing on the train. But all of this effort is to no avail. Kawagawa covers the events that happened at the school, which we already witnessed firsthand. And he attributes the game as the reason for their deaths. What is really strange to me is how Uyama hasn't mentioned anything about Asahi at this point. As in the first game, he was made aware of everything that happened to her, and how she was the reason the curse game even existed. Uyama and Kawagawa tell us that we need to visit Kenta and Naoki's grave to try to find more evidence. we choose to visit Kenta's. Arriving at the graveyard, we get an email from Kawagawa. Apparently, Naoki, Akane, and Kenta were all friends from a very young age, and Akane and Naoki were raised together from birth. One thing this game does very well is instill a tremendous amount of paranoia in you. Continuing further into the graveyard, we get a game update. We are, apparently, in the town of the dead. In a chest, we find another faceless head. North of the tavern, a stranger tells us, "The demon hand lies under the path lined by red poles. Stay calm and quiet. Don't rush forward. Stop before the 4th pole, then take a rest before walking past the 7th. Using this information, we run past the hands of the devil and find ourselves in front of a well. As we get near it, we are pushed in by the girl in the dress? Walking into the tunnel, there are 3 cages on the left. In the first are red handprints, which, you can guess at this point, open the platformer game. In the second, white handprints, which open the RPG. This time, all of the doors in the inn that we start in are locked. But a strange figure comes and lets us out. Making our way to the 3rd cage, we find a ghost. I died to this ghost and had to redo all of that 3 times. We finally make it through the tunnel and exit up a set of stairs into a small room. Going through a secret door, we find ourselves in some sort of shrine. The next area is full of headstones. Which we again have to play Ring Around the Rosie with the ghosts to get through. Continuing down the path and through a door, the RPG opens again. The NPC at the item shop tells us how some outsider woman got captured, presumably the one who released us last time. The NPC pacing above the tavern tells us 6 eyes will open the path to heaven. First is the left eye, then the right. Finally, destroy both eyes and escape Hell's Gatekeeper. Now, this part really confused me. The riddle was apparently too complex for my walnut brain. But after 20 minutes, yes, 20 minutes, I was tired. I figured it out. Left, right, both. I finally made it through. Making it to the end of the path, we find a high school student. Likely one of the boys. We start in the inn again, but this time we find the stranger at the gate, who lets us out. we follow them up the path and interact with them inside of this strange house. We are taken to the waiting screen of the game, the one where you try to open it when there's no update. Apparently, we are Kenta here, and we are speaking to Akane and Naoki. Naoki asks us to go on another adventure, and Akane asks us where we went. Kenta says, Naoki was my best friend. We did everything together. I couldn't imagine that anything could ever destroy our friendship. We then see Naoki being bullied, and Akane standing close behind. Kenta confronts the bully, refusing to back down. And apparently, he did it for Akane to protect her. Kenta then says, I wanted to save both Naoki and Akane, but I was no match for those high schoolers. I understood how emasculating it must have been for Naoki. So that's why I wanted to help him. At the school, Naoki tells us how Akane has been acting weird and anxious. Kenta goes and speaks to Akane, and she tells him how she really likes him. Kenta then confronts Naoki, telling him how he's been going out with Akane, and he seems upset by that. Kenta says, Naoki changed that day, and that saddened me. But I thought there was no way around it. I thought I'd wait and let time heal the wound. Akane then tells Kenta that Naoki has been depressed, and thinks that it's because of their relationship. People in the classroom are talking about the cursed game, and Kenta's relationship with Akane. Naoki asks Kenta about the cursed game, and says he wants to try it, but doesn't have internet at his house. He wants Kenta to play it. Kenta says, I was so glad. Naoki was counting on me, just like old times. But I was wrong. It was stupid of me to try to get back on Naoki's good side by playing that game. I didn't want to sacrifice my love or my friendship, so I was punished for trying to cheat the system. I was fine with it, but I never wanted to drag Akane and Naoki into it. I regret it so much. Kenta clarifies that he was not killed by Naoki, but in fact, the game. He then says how Akane witnessed it, and it made her lose her mind, because she mistakenly thought that Naoki had killed him. He then goes on to say how Naoki is spreading the game from that dark hospital. He says he doesn't know which hospital it is, but I think we have a good idea. He has to tag along with us in the same manner that Uyama did. After some deliberation with Uyama and Kawagawa, we determine that it's possible Mercy General Hospital is where Akane is located. So we head that way. Showing up at the hospital, it's no different from last time, except it looks newer and cleaner, and the lights are on. Kawagawa emails us telling us that a horrific accident took place 5 years ago here. possibly why it was shut down. And Uyama thinks that the game might be involved with that incident. Walking to the end of the hall and trying to open the door, we turn around, seeing the girl in the red dress and the one in the white dress. The game opens, and we follow the white dress girl through a maze. Until we're interrupted by the one in the red dress, who says, "You will die here. I won't let you escape." As the game closes, we are back at the entrance of the hospital, but things look a little different. The way we progress through the hospital is identical to the way we did in the first game. We continue through the mazes in the RPG, avoiding the red ghost girl. Until finally, the girl in the white dress is able to revert the hospital to looking normal again. As we walk up to the second floor, the girl in the red dress greets us again. After failing to get past this impossible level, the game closes, and the walls are covered in blood again. We continue into the bathroom, beating a platformer level to continue. And in the next room, we find the girl in the white dress. Going next to her, we open the next level of the game. And after some precise movement, we speak to her. And find some faceless guts. She says how she doesn't have enough power to stop the curse. As we walk through the door, the building immediately becomes covered in blood again. We note how it was too powerful for her to contain. We continue to the nursery, where we hear this. From what I can gather, they are saying Kurosu, which means kill. Leaving the nursery and avoiding the girl in the red dress, we enter this room, where the girl in the white dress tells us "7 rooms have been sealed off by the curse. If you don't undo the curse, follow my lead." Pushing down the hall, we see the 7 rooms that we need to enter. Going one by one, we enter each room. We find the object we need to interact with, and follow the girl on an invisible path in the game. In this room, we find a handgun. Why can't I take it? Just take the handgun, use it. But, anyway. After making it through the 7th door, we break the curse and enter the center of the hospital. Entering this long hallway, we continuously run into the girl in the red dress. She says, "You will pay. Are you just trying to save yourself? Leave. Get out. Go away." Opening the doors to the final room, we find the white dress girl and Ren. We see ourselves in the RPG with Uyama and this girl. We walk over to talk to her, and she says, "So you finally made it here." Uyama asks if she's the one who came into contact with him in Odaka. She says yes. Uyama asks who she is, and she says, "I'm Akane." Uyama states that he believed that the girl in the red dress was Akane. And Akane responds, "That is also me. My hatred grew out of control and created her." Uyama notes that her soul is split in two and does his typical Redditor thing. Akane goes on to explain, "When I was brought to this hospital, I was almost entirely brain dead. I remained in that state for a long time. The agony was indescribable. Then, one day, something inside me changed. I vented all my hatred at anyone involved with the game. I started transmitting the cursed game to innocent people and killed them. I wanted to stop it somehow, but I couldn't prevent my other self from acting out. So I left my body. So, if I die, that should stop the curse. Please, you have to kill me. I saw the truth through Beam's left eye. But my feelings couldn't get through that way at all. What should I do?" Uyama says we'll speak directly with their soul and to leave everything to him. With the help of Uyama, we are able to sync our soul with Akane's. He tells us to match our breathing with the pulsation of our left eye. We awake in a wheat field, also known as Akane's mental world. Here, we are experiencing a childhood memory of Akane, as noted by Uyama on our comment of being shorter. Uyama continues to explain how this is a memory and tells us that we need to find Akane's soul. As we walk into the field, we come face to face with Akane's dark side. From here, we can go right, left, or straight. After I stubbornly tried to go straight 3 times, I decided to go right. From here, it took me nearly 12 tries to dodge her. After finally figuring out the specific way to get past her, we make it to a scarecrow. The game launches, and we meet Kenta again. I used to play here with Akane when we were little. Akane didn't like them either. Scarecrows sure looked big in those days. We've got to save Akane. Let's go. From here, we are transported to the beginning of the maze, and we have to do it all over again. But this time, we go left. At the end, another scarecrow. And here, we speak with Naoki. I'm Naoki. Ren told me what happened to Akane. She got me out of my tomb. She said that I have to tell Akane the truth. We are transported to the beginning again, but this time we can actually go straight and enter the shed. In here, we find the walls covered in static. Uyama says, "This noise is Beam. I've figured it out. I was stuck on what made Akane's soul to split apart, but now I know the cause. The game is consuming Akane's soul. Having lost Asahi Ikuda, the game was enticed by Akane's negative emotions and found its way to her. The game trapped her, fed off her hatred, and propagated itself. What an absolutely magnificent spectacle." The game then opens up. As we run from the noise, we find ourselves back at the cabin. Here we meet the same strange girl from 2 levels ago. And turns out she is Ren. Yuto also makes an appearance. Kinda forgot about him. For a brief moment, the game closes, and we see Akane's evil spirit. The red dress. We then see her outside the cabin. They'll pay. I'll never forgive them. Not games, and not people who play them. I'll make them all pay. Everyone surrounds her, trying to calm her, and explain that Naoki didn't kill Kenta. But this doesn't work out too well, and yeah. As the game closes, we see Akane's true form again. Uyama says how this will be the toughest situation you will ever face in your life. And goddamn, he was not lying. I spent an hour dying over and over and over again, until finally I figured out that strafing was the answer. God bless strafing. Uyama is able to acquire a patch from Ikuta himself to create a new ending for the game. While we're still strafing, Uyama tells us the patch is here. We open the RPG again, and he crosses through the static. He collides with Akane, and we all surround her again. What? What could this warm feeling be? Kenta walks over and tells Akane how he's sorry for failing to protect her. Naoki arrives and asks Akane for forgiveness. And for not giving her and Kenta his blessing. Akane's other half shows up and explains how it was no one's fault. And says, let's all go home. It's so dark and gloomy here, right? Akane's evil half asks, why are you leaving me all alone? I was so sad, so scared, so lonely. She breaks down in tears. The two halves become one. And as we fade to white, a cutscene begins. Akane, Kenta, and Naoki ascend. The credits roll. At the end, it reads, the end. Question mark. Question mark? Question mark? What? Even after 7 days passed, I didn't die. Kawagawa asks us where Ren is. We are speechless. The game cuts to a photo of Ren in a bed, accompanied by the text, Ren won't wake up. We get an email from an unknown sender, reading, where is my body? Now, as you may have guessed, this isn't the true ending. In order to access the true ending, we need to play through the whole game. Oh, come on! God damn it! We need to play through the whole game again. So, remember those strange faceless body parts? Well, turns out we need each one of them to make an entire faceless body. To get the rest of the body parts, we need to replay the game and go to the locations that we didn't choose in the first playthrough. We create a new save and speedrun our way through the first 20 minutes of the game. First up is the subway instead of Uyama's house. And this place is creepy as hell. We navigate through the subway until we find an RPG level containing a faceless left leg. Bingo. We also find Uyama's memo, the same one Ren went to find when we were at Uyama's house. Next up is Hotel Quent instead of the karaoke club. In one of the RPGs, we find a faceless right arm. And a note saying somebody named Uyama came here. When he asked if I'd seen anything suspicious going on, I told him he was the most suspicious person here. At the end of the level, we find a DS on a desk, just like the one from the rooftop of the karaoke club. And unsurprisingly, this one also belongs to Hoki. We quickly rush through the school level, and then pick to go to Naoki's grave this time instead. The level is basically identical, except reversed. We start at the top of the stairs to heaven and work our way back down, hiding behind a light post to avoid the ghosts. We then get pushed into the well again. And walk around the graveyard to put out these strange purple flames, which allow us to interact with Naoki. Doing so gives us essentially the same exact RPG level from Naoki's perspective. It's exactly the same. We then go through the hospital again and make our way through the wheat field, reaching the final sequence. And so far, it all looks the same. We then see Ren again in the bed, but when we get the email this time, it says, "If you want to save Ren, come and meet me. The door is open." Uyama then tells us how the game is still active. After it lost to Kane, it somehow restarted. He tells us not to go, and that it's a trap. He says if we don't go, the game won't be able to claim any more victims. But obviously, we choose to help Ren. And then he chimes in with his typical Redditor BS.
It seems my cohabitation with you ends here. That's too bad. Humans are very weak creatures indeed. Thanks for the gold kind, stranger.
We are now back at the student housing, in our room. We see Ren laying on the bed. We enter the next room and someone says,
"So you came. I'm so glad."
And
I am the creation of Asahi Ikuda. I've been incomplete since the time I was born.
we enter a small hole in the wall.
I can't live on alone. I have no name. Should I not have been born?
Based off the tissues, we can assume that this is Yuto's room. We go through a small hole in the ceiling. And crawl around the attic until we find a strange opening with colorful pixels surrounding it. If you're sensitive to flashing lights, now would be a good time to look away. You can look back when you hear the wind. Entering the hallway, we come face to face with this strange person.
I don't want to die. I don't want to die. So, I'm taking Ren. But Ren was happy. I can't enter people who are happy. I'll never forgive you. You'll pay for this. You won't escape. And I won't forgive you for playing the game.
We see Ren hanging from the wall. We approach her, and...
So, I'll make Ren watch you die. That way, Ren will become the same as me. So...
Die.